Hello everyone and welcome to the LSI F1.5 EU Championship. We're today for the Japanese Grand Prix, round 10 of 14. We've got Jericho Willis running the final corner to try and compete with Verth, but currently they are 5/10 ahead of their McLaren rival. Verth taking victory back in Qatar last weekend with a fastest lap to take maximum points for their Drivers' Championship hopes. They are now 34 points away from the McLaren driver who's in the lead after a very good run in previous races. It's going to be a tall order for Verth, but they're doing everything that they need to. And if they can just try and replicate what they did last weekend, although maybe they would like it to be a bit more comfortable, but compared to last weekend, because that was a pretty intense one all the way. Both drivers were racing incredibly closely, strategically deciding who's going to get DRS for the final few laps. It was a hell of a chess game and very enjoyable to watch. Now, a quick update on the situation. Unfortunately, we don't have Terence in the lobby. They're having some internet issues. Hopefully they can get in by the time qualifying ends, but we will see. If we don't see them, then they will lose their big advantage, or sorry, close gap they had to P2, who is Verth. It's the way it goes sometimes, and it wouldn't be ideal, but they would be most likely safe from Bread is Cool, at least for a bit. It would take away the safety net that they do currently have. We've got 5 minutes on the clock and just a couple of more runs to go. As you can see, Rare Winter trying to do what they can. Can we see them on the podium? It would be good to try and get them there again. Almost ended qualifying immediately as they go off the track at Spoon, and they're going to have to try and go again in their next runs. Their tyre was worn, so it's not like it would have mattered too much. They will have a fresh set of tyres ready to go with a full front wing as well. Not particularly happy with the situation, I assume, as they weave across, but they do make it back into the pit lane. Alrighty, just double checking something and we'll be back. Here we go, the final moments in qualifying. Brothers Cool is the first one to start these final attempts, going through the first few corners. On the exit of 2, a big bit of understeer had to make them work hard at the steering wheel. They go for the S's now to try and make some progress if they can. Already halfway on the battery as they blasted it down the start-finish straight up through Dunlop, and now heading towards the Degner nice and tidy through the exit off the S section. But this is where it gets really quite tricky. You want to try and get on those brakes and get the car rotated, not riding the exit curb too much, as it can throw you off if you're not careful, into the hairpin, down into third, maybe second if you can. Be careful on that throttle, on the traction, and then flat through this right-hander, almost a straight, but not really that much of an opportunity to overtake in the race. Spoon corner coming up, down into fifth, and then once again down into fourth, and they'll get back on the throttle to try and nail it all the way as they'll get to 130 yard, trying to get the best exit possible, as otherwise you will lose out a massive amount all the way down this straight. And they've got the Casio triangle coming up for the final time for Brothers Cool. What can they do? How late will they brake? Riding the curves nicely. No bollards to worry about. Bring it to the right hand side, minimize the track distance, and across the line to P4 28.8, as they're incredibly close to their fellow countrymen, but not quite close enough to make it work in the end. It's our pole position master. Almost 100% pole position rate this season so far. They're ahead by a lot. They're going to try and extend once again, and they will do so by 3/10. Will Jericho Willis have an answer? Will they be able to come back from this one? They will not. They will not. But a 0.5 improvement to a 0.6 lap time is absolutely epic. And that is qualifying done. More damage there for Rare Winter will not allow them to go any further, but it's not going to make a difference on their position anyway, as Terrence joins late and does not get a qualifying lap in. Peanuts is a higher tier driver. That's the way it goes in qualifying, and that was a lovely lap there from Verf. Still a very nice lap from Jericho Willis as well to give it a good effort, but just over 2.5 tenths behind in the end. This is the race director. I will confirm Verf is on pole position, Jericho Willis in P2 and Rare Winter in P3. We'll be back for the race. We'll see you in a bit. Ready? Hold! Go! Who's going to get it into turn one? Jericho Willis on the inside line. Will they get the run into the first corner? I don't think so. Verf is ahead, and Verf gets to turn two in front. Absolutely perfect. P3 stays the same here for Rare Winter, but it's Peanuts who gets ahead of Brothers Cool in the early corners. Will they be able to make some progress and try and go for their second win this season in F1.5 EU? Last time they raced in F1.5, they did finish in first in Silverstone. We've got Brothers Cool dropping behind Terence there, so having another issue as they go through the S section on these cold tyres, not finding it easy at all. That's what we saw in the first iteration of the race yesterday for Sir Maxon in the F1 tier. On the hards though, not the mediums. Still doesn't mean that it's difficult on the medium tyre. Everyone's in the train, that's the good news, and we can continue racing as we go. Verf is coming towards the end of the first lap already and has had a very, very comfortable start for sure. Jericho Willis is just going to be managing, and I know it's early on in this race, but they were trying to be settling in to this rhythm, wait for that DRS, and that's a big issue there for Rare Winter, who's had a brilliant qualifying position, but a bit of a weird one there on the straight. Just saw them go into the wall, and then they've lost a massive chunk of time now out of DRS range, and I don't think Peanuts is going to really be too patient with anything like that. Would they go for the move into the first corner? Well, they have a lot of straight line speed. They've decided to use the ERS late on. Defensive throw to the inside from the Red Bull. The Mercedes tries to have a go. They try to muscle the Mercedes out, and they do so indeed. So Rare Winter stays ahead for now. But that was an interesting one. It was a bit of a late usage there from Peanuts on the ERS, not really realizing that they would have had a chance at making that move until the final few meters of the Grand Prix. So a difficult one. They're going to have to try and recoup and go again because they've got 1.5 seconds to the cars in front, so they do need to find some more. Purple middle sector from Jericho Willis, who now follows on the Sauber nice and closely, and they were pretty close compared to where they were last lap. Now they've just had a big snap on the exit of the hairpin. They lost a bit of time, but they are still closer than they were, it looks like. So really putting some good pressure on that Sauber to try and make sure that they aren't relaxed and not giving Verf an easy time at trying to catch up to the American driver in the championship standings. It's lap 2, almost lap 3. It's very early to talk about that, of course, as we're not getting to the final stages of the race, but we definitely can speculate, and it's all part of the fun. DRS will be available for Peanuts now, and they'll be looking to go for that move nice and easily on the DRS straight. Terence, seeming to have some pretty good connection right now, is back into this race as well. We've got Peanuts going for the outside move once again. ERS, DRS is being used. They're ahead this time around going into turn 1, and on the exit of turn 2, being ahead just carries the momentum, and you have every right to be there. It's a much easier once you get that overlap. They've made it work, they've made it stick, and now they've got to try and not allow it to get to a 2-second gap. It does go to a 2-second gap. They've now got to try and bring that back down if they can do so. They did race yesterday, so they do have some experience. A Grand Prix distance, that's what they do have, 27 laps under their belt. That's Brothers Cool having a massive off at Degner 1 going into Degner 2. They are lucky to keep it on track. They can't afford to do that too much more, but hopefully for their sake they stay within DRS range, because they've now got a 9/10 gap as Terence is stuck right behind the cars in front in the tow and getting a nice advantage with the slipstream right there. It's slightly cancelled out because Rare Winter is getting a tow from Peanuts himself, but Peanuts is trying to push. It's another issue there for Rare Winter, who goes down the order. It's going to allow the McLaren to go through. Rare Winter, instead of having an issue on the straight, just completely understeers on the exit of Spoon. That's maybe a bit more of a racing error rather than a technical fault, so hopefully they can find a bit of a rhythm again and catch back up. Rare Winter had podiums in their time. They were fighting for podiums earlier this season, so we know that they've got the pace to be incredibly competitive. They're going for the outside line on their former teammate, dipping a wheel in the grass. Surely they're never going to have an idea of going around the outside into turn 2. They will do so. They'll have the inside line in the following corner, but they'll be on the curb, and that wasn't going to work. And Rare Winter has to stay behind, but still seems incredibly quick right now. And Bread is Cool has some sort of issue, but it doesn't seem that they've got damage. They've just got an incredibly tricky car to drive. That being said, do they have damage on that front right end plate? No, they don't. So they are good to go. I just don't quite understand why they're having a bit of a pace disadvantage, as significant as it is compared to their former teammate. They've been pretty evenly matched in the past, but it's not going to make a difference because Brenda's Call still manages to stay ahead. The top two are continuing to break away as they slipstream train one another, helping them gain every little bit they can on those cars behind. And they're not going to go for the move into the Casio triangle. It wouldn't really be too wise, as you can just get DRS anyway. They will stay behind the McLaren driver and then go for the move into turn 1. We've got Peanuts and Terrence, the former teammates in the F1.5 EU Championship a few seasons ago, following closely behind one another, but it is Peanuts who will be clearly in front. Verf gets that lovely toe. It's going to be once again a fight into turn 1 here with Rare Winter and Bread is Cool. This time it's the inside line for Rare Winter. It's a little bit of a wheel bang that pushes Bread is Cool wide, but unfortunately they weren't able to get that run despite getting a brilliant run on the exit of turn 2. It's just not going to happen, and they will have to concede that position and let it be. Will Rare Winter be able to find a bit of pace to try and catch up to Terrence and Peanuts? Will Terrence and Peanuts be able to catch to the cars ahead? Right now, 2.5 seconds. The gap has only got bigger. I apologise for the noises there. We are double checking a few things. And there we are, good to go once again. The gaps are looking very similar. Maybe it's a little bit bigger than we would have expected between Jericho, Willis and Verf. Nothing to worry about at this stage, as long as they are in a comfortable rhythm. For Jericho Willis, of course. But they won't be going for the move into the first corner. Not from that distance back, not on lap 6, when you really don't need to be running that battery down low. Terrence goes for the move on Peanuts, gets that slingshot, 3.1 seconds. Peanuts maybe having an issue, making a mistake. It's going to be Brothers Cool getting ahead before turn 1 on Rare Winter, but not really making it work in between turn 1 and 2 as you pass the first apex of the 2 corners. Now, it just lost them a bit of time, but not costing Brothers Cool the position. Rare Winter's going to be a bit frustrated. But nothing they can do about it. Maybe that was a bit of lag there, as they seem to have a moment on the exit of the first Degner, as Brothers Cool had a few laps ago, but it wasn't anything more. And they continue to follow one another. Verf half a second behind and following closely is Jericho Willis. Brothers Cool, Jericho's teammate, working together nicely to have a massive lead in the Constructors or Teams Championship, I should say, as I always mess that one up. Jericho will not be going for that move into the first corner, once again a bit too far back, but I'm sure they aren't worried at all. Peanuts loses DRS range here to Terrence. Terrence has managed to find a decent amount of pace, but not quite able to compete with the DRS train up in front. 108 points ahead is McLaren over Sauber in the team's championship. That's what we're looking at there. So McLaren currently having both leads in the championships, which is a brilliant result for them for now. Will it stay the same though? That's the question. We're currently on board with the race winner from Silverstone, who is trying to get back within the DRS of the race winner from the Italian Grand Prix back in Monza, towards the kind of middle part, the start of the middle part of the season. Just 4 races in. And they do get within that DRS range once again. We currently just have 3 duos racing one another on track. That is a bit of a push there from Peanuts, who gets a time penalty. Bredesco has had the same. Instead of a time penalty though, Jericho Willis gained a position, which is good news for their race. And we will once again very likely see these two go to the very end of the Grand Prix close to one another. That being said, pit stops will be tricky to manage here. It will be very difficult. It's a bumpy pit lane, and they've got to make sure that they don't speed. It's also a little bit of a sudden one. You can make a very late call into the pit lane if you want to. So whoever leads, they could possibly catch the car behind off guard by diving into the pit lane. Of course, that being said, maybe the car behind would want to try and do something a little bit different with the strategy. Verve just encountering some big snaps on the exit of the hairpin. That puts them down to 8 tenths momentarily, back to 6 tenths. They've gained it before they get to Spoon, but a little bit of a scare, and they've got to work hard to try and catch back up once again. Off on the battery mid-corner, but then back on the battery once again as they go down the main straight, or the back straight, sorry, to make sure that they don't lose too much time. Time penalty wise, 3 seconds to everyone that does have time penalties. That's on your screen right now. Will an overtake be possible here for the Sauber? Will they try and control the pace, get ahead? They will not, but they will gain a lot on the battery and just try and relax. It's quite therapeutic when you can sit behind a car ahead and just chill. That being said, DRS can only take you so far. You can relax down on the start-finish straight, but then when you get through the rest of the circuit, when you've got the dirty air and then you've got a quick car in front of you, it can be quite stressful. Terence ahead at the moment of the Mercedes car. Peanuts is someone who doesn't have really a lot to relax about, because they are trying their best to find that DRS range on Terence. Now, they won't be able to relax at any point on the circuit at this point. Having to try and manage their battery so they can really deploy it where they need to get within this DRS range, and currently they're doing enough, but as they go through Spoon, Terence has just found a massive amount of time. It doesn't really seem that Peanuts has had that big of an issue, but just down the straight the slipstream takes it all the way. But Terence really quite confident in the corners, it seems. We're going to probably see Verve go for the move into the first corner at this point. They put the battery on, try and give it a go. Jericho Willis will not contest, and we'll let that one happen. DRS and possibly a little bit of ERS to be used here for all the Mercedes, but it's going to be P6 and P5 who switch positions once again. Brothers Coulters get ahead comfortably of Rare Winter, and they will continue in single file. But I'll tell you what, these guys are not giving each other an easy time. If they aren't side by side, if they are, sorry, side by side just before they get to the braking zone of the first corner, or the turning point of the first corner around Suzuka, they don't allow one another to go through. They full out send it and go for some fighting moments to decide who stays ahead, and it's pretty exciting to see, that's for sure. Maybe doesn't gain you any time as they go for the throw on the entry to the hairpin with a bit of a tap on the rear end from Rare Winter, but it does create for some excitement and some good racing as long as it doesn't go any further. Now Verf 4 tenths behind the top two, not really fighting, just training one another along, and it does help massively. As you can see, that's now a 4.7 second gap. Peanuts has managed to find a decent amount of pace, of course, now within the DRS range, and going to be getting a lot of slipstream from the back of that Haas car. They might have a go at making a move, but it's Terrence into the pit lane very early on. Bread is cool is going to be ahead of Rare Winter. Will Rare Winter go for the move into the first corner? They're trying to use the battery. They're using it all the way as much as they can. A massive amount of a tow and overspeed, I should say, and they do get ahead comfortably. Now Terrence goes for that hard tyre fairly early on. That's an interesting call. I say fairly early on. It's not too early on, but they've gone earlier than the rest of the field. Now we could see a reaction. Oh, and that is a massive amount of time gained from Bredis Call, who's trying to get back past their rival already, despite it not being really that much of a straight. They do back off. They're just continuing to give each other a hard time, which is great to see if you both do the same thing, of course. Now, Terrence, 13.9 seconds. They're hoping that no one gets in front of them as they go for their outlap. These tyres are going to be cold, and they're going to try and make them work. The thing is, if you do pit early, the risk you run is if those tyres are not easy to get up to temperature, then those tyres on the other cars that haven't fully worn out yet all of a sudden don't really have that much of a disadvantage by not going for that undercut. Now, we see Peanuts react to Terrence's decision. Verf and Jericho feel that they don't need to after being 5 seconds ahead of the cars before that pit stop was made anyway. So, there's a few calls going on. Verf and Jericho Willis can continue to extend for as long as they want and make their own decision. It is going to be Terrence in P6. Peanuts will come out of the pit lane right there, and you can see they'll go side by side, possibly into the first corner, but Terrence will not get ahead, as I said, of the Mercedes driver, and that's just what happens when those tyres are cold. It's incredibly difficult to manage. Terrence has probably still got a bit of temperature to bring up once again, but they should have better tyres compared to Peanuts at the moment. Doesn't seem so simple though when you're in dirty air as well, so really a little bit too early, and it didn't quite work out for the Haas car. 12.6 seconds though, they will be catching to Bredis Call and Rare Winter. Will they actually be able to catch to the back of them? I really don't think so. But Terrence doesn't care. He's just lost the position in the pit lane to Peanuts. They were close regardless, and Peanuts did have the DRS as Terrence went into the pit lane, so that will have definitely helped Peanuts get that undercut. And maybe that, well, not maybe, that was probably what made the difference in making that move. But Terrence wasn't expecting it. Just didn't think that could happen. And these guys will follow each other once again. We're not going to see a switch from Rare Winter and Bredis Call. We didn't see a switch from Verf and Jericho Willis. It's currently a McLaren 2-3 at the moment, but with a very unlikely chance of a safety car occurring. We aren't going to need to worry. And Verf leads the way to reach the halfway mark of this Grand Prix. I'm just waiting to see how this one will go. Will they stay out for many more laps? Will they fight each other hard? Will Peanuts and Terrence catch up to the back of these guys? Terrence 7 tenths behind the Swedish driver. They need to try and find a bit more if they do want to keep it with a safety margin. 3 Steam drivers, 3 Xbox drivers. Currently, the Xbox drivers are doing a bit better if you take away the pit stops. However, of course, Peanuts and Terrence, they haven't made any they have made pit stops, so they will be making this move ahead of them eventually, very soon. So, a big send right there from Rare Winter, trying to have a go on the inside line. DRS will be available once again, but it's going to be the pit lane, and almost into the pit lane wall, braking as late as they could on the bumps, and that's a 10-second time penalty, as I expected. Now, we're going to get British Cool going into the pit lane very soon to probably react to their rival, and they're going to know that they just need to be very careful on the entry to the pit lane, and that's all they need to do to make sure that they don't lose the position overall in the end to British Cool. To Rare Winter. An easy thing to get wrong around Suzuka, and we've seen our first victim of the pit lane entry. We've still got a few more pit lane entries to go. That's with Verf, Jericho and British Cool. Currently half of the grid have been into the pit lane and are trying to make a bit of an advantage of the cars ahead. And Peanuts and Terrence, being out for as many laps as they are, may start to find themselves closing up to the back of Jericho and Verf by the time the top two, of course, have made those pit stops. Their tyres will be much more worn, and of course Jericho and Verf have the advantage of being in a train with one another, but they've reached and gone past the halfway mark of this race, and they will follow each other into the pit lane. Will they slow down the car enough? They will not, and it's the second victim of the Grand Prix into the pit lane entry. And I just said it earlier on in the race, we've just seen it happen, and we've seen it happen again in a very short space of time. That's incredibly frustrating. Now Verf's got to work incredibly hard and hope that they can nail this pit lane exit, as they will see the McLaren driver of British Cool stay out on track and be ahead. That's a big mistake there for Jericho Willis on the pit lane exit. 2.2 seconds, just not getting a very, very good exit on those incredibly cold tyres. Peanuts and Terrence are hoping that they can try and find a bit more time. They've gained about 2 seconds-ish on the cars ahead, but they still need to find a lot more if they do want to actually compete. And now Verf, 3.1 seconds. They've got 3 seconds advantage to Jericho Willis, more or less. They need to find another 7 in this second stint of the Grand Prix. They have to try and find everything they can and just set qualifying laps for the rest of this race if they want to have any chance at going for the victory. And Jericho Willis continues to struggle with the temperature. 3.5 seconds now. It's drastically dropping. Now, what Jericho Willis has here is British Cool, who is staying out. And not only is British Cool out right now on track and maybe going into the pit lane within a couple of laps, they're not going into the pit lane just yet because, well, if they were going to react to Rare Winter properly, they would have gone into the pit lane in the last lap. So if British Cool doesn't go into the pit lane this lap either, then Verf's going to have a bit of trouble, I'll assume. And there you go. British Cool does stay out. Verf's not going to have it easy to get past and into P1 as they were earlier on in the Grand Prix. They gain about a 10th in the last half a lap, effectively, on Jericho Willis. They're quite possibly going to lose the gap all of a sudden once again. Those medium tyres are pretty dead at the moment. And with a car that has their teammates' best interests at mind, it's going to be almost impossible to get through with ease, despite having such a tyre advantage, unless they can go for the move on entry to the hairpin. As you can see, British Cool is just holding off nicely, going slightly defensive to make sure Verf doesn't get any ideas on the inside line. They get a massive loss of traction, going to the grass to try and make the move, and Verf will get through, and they'll spot the opportunity. Brothers Cool is giving it everything on the battery, the inside line, but they back off as they realise it's not going to work out, not with the grip disadvantage. Will they get the slipstream? Will they use the battery to try and have a go to help their teammate out into the Casio triangle? They're gaining a massive amount. I didn't expect it to be this much, but I don't think it's going to matter. Surely they're not going to send it to the inside line. It's not going to be enough. It's a big pressurised moment though for Verf, who locks up the rears and into the first corner. DRS will be available. ERS is to a minimum. Will this be enough to allow Brothers Cool to have another go to try and put pressure on the Sauber driver? A slight defensive throw from the green car. The orange car still can't find the grip, and that's going to be it for the fight. They will not gain any more, but a brilliant effort has seen Jericho Willis gain a couple of tenths over the last few laps on Brothers Cool, thanks to his teammate, on Verf, thanks to his teammate. Brothers Cool gave it his absolute best. It's unfortunately a retirement there for Rare Winter in the pit lane as they give up on this race, which is a shame, a massive shame. I was looking forward to Brothers Cool going into the pit lane and getting a severe overcut, effectively, or trying to go for a bit of an overcut and then have a move later on in the final laps of this race. That will not happen in the end, and we are likely to see Jericho Willis make this move on the McLaren drive, on his teammate I should say, very soon. Terence stays within the DRS of Peanuts at the moment, but they're not able to catch to the top two runners, the net top two runners. DRS is going to look very available here for Jericho Willis into the braking zone with the grip they have, and on the traction with the advantage they have. They're not going to be able to go for the move. I thought they might have had a chance, but Brothers Cool was too far ahead, but they will back off. They choose to do so instead. Now how's this one going to go? Will Brothers Cool stay out to try and defend from the cars behind, or will they go into the pit lane? Well, right now, Jericho Willis hopes that Brothers Cool goes into the pit lane, focuses on their own race, and doesn't worry about Peanuts and Terence, because as far as Jericho Willis is concerned, he needs Verf to have as many cars close behind him as possible to lose even more points in this race. After that amazing defense, despite having a brilliant outlap from Verf, Brothers Cool has really brought that gap down by about half a second, more or less, and allowed Jericho Willis to have just a little bit more breathing room. And we've got under 10 laps of this Grand Prix, just over 9 remaining. It's an incredibly tall order. Not impossible if they really find everything, but it's going to be so tough. As long as Jericho Willis doesn't make any mistakes, they will be able to take victory in Suzuka, take another victory this season, and just make that championship ever more closer to their name. Verf for the fastest lap is trying to find a bit, but Jericho Willis responds immediately at 0.969. We're going to have a look at the times at the moment. Incredibly close to one another, barely anything in it, but ultimately the laps are the laps, and Jericho Willis is reacting nicely and doing enough that despite not having DRS, these guys are equally matched. You can't really say anything different. They are equally matching each other at the moment. Now we go back to the gaps here, and we're actually going to see Brothers Cool slow down to allow Peanuts to go for the move. Terence didn't have the ability to do it. I don't quite know if that was a mistake there on the exit of Dunlop from Brothers Cool. Will Terence go for the overtake maneuver into the inside of the hairpin, or they wait for the traction as they head to Spoon? Well, they're not going to have the traction down, and they will just have to let it be. No move will be possible. And this is only going to make it more frustrating here for Terence to be able to make a move and stay within DRS range of their former teammate. A big mistake there from Brothers Cool. but still defending with everything they can. I don't think they're realizing what Verf's situation is with the time penalty situation, and they need to try and allow these cars to stay in front, but they really want to try and hold up Terence. Interestingly, DRS is available, and that McLaren is still staying out, looking for the soft tyres to end this race on instead. DRS, ERS, and no questions asked. That will be Terence going through, but 1.5 seconds lost effectively to Peanuts, who they were following. Let's make it about a second, not 1.5 seconds. So quite unfortunate, quite frustrating for Terence. 0.3 seconds behind. They're going to try and catch back up. Regardless of where Peanuts finishes, they are a higher tier driver. If Terence finishes behind them, they will still get that P3 as it stands. That gap in the meantime has got even bigger. 4.4 seconds is the gap that splits Jericho Willis and Verf. Looking at the time penalties, we just want to confirm it. 10 seconds at the moment. Was Jericho Willis to get a 3-second time penalty, that would be a 7.5 second gap, and Verf maybe wouldn't have an impossible task ahead of them. But of course, that's easier said than done. You've got a car behind you that knows what they've got in the bag. They know that there is a 10-second time penalty in front of them, and they can relax a bit. They can't relax too much, though. That's a 0.680 from Verf, who's absolutely smashed that lap time with, well, I'm going to say almost a whole second, just 0.8 faster that lap alone than Jericho Willis. Where did that come from? Must have been a bit of usage going on, surely. Other than that, I wouldn't really have an explanation. They're just trying to put the pressure on Verf by extending this gap and forcing Jericho Willis to try and have a go, to try and push a little bit more, to try and go over track limits. But I don't know if this is really going to work. The championship leader has experience. These guys both raced yesterday. They know where the track limits are. .1 seconds. Verf continues to try and go faster and faster. Brothers Cool stayed out on this tyre at the moment, still looking to go to that soft tyre at the very late stages, maybe hoping to go for fastest lap. And not really much slower than they were before was Verf, who actually sets a faster lap time than Jericho's fastest lap a couple of laps ago. So they are really doing absolute bits right now to give it a shot. Will it be enough? I don't quite know. I want to have a quick look at these tyres right now. They're going to be screaming on Brothers Cool's car. You'll see the understeer through turn 2. Absolutely tragic. On the traction as well. Losing it. Very nervous on the rear end. And those rears do not look easy to really use. You can see the nervousness of the car. And the graining on the right-hand side there, just beneath the track map. Losing the car through Dunlop, that's a scary moment for any driver in a sim, in the F1 game, or in real life. And I'm really not sure how long these tyres can go, but they obviously seem to know that they can stay on for a little bit longer, and then they will go for that fastest lap attempt to bring it away from Verf and towards the McLaren garage, towards the McLaren's team championship. 6.4 seconds. Jericho's got to try and make a move. It's not going to work out if they continue like this and just matching, going a little bit faster than their previous best and setting another fastest lap, continuing to put the pressure on Jericho Willis. who can't find an answer and seems to be allowing everything to get to them. Maybe I'm dramatizing it, if that's even a word. But it just seems that maybe this is a bit too much of an advantage that Verf's had, or has right now, for this to be a management strategy from Jericho Willis. You could say, yeah, well, Jericho knows that he's got a 10-second to play with, so he's going to back off and just allow himself to relax all the way to the end of the Grand Prix. And I would say that's fair enough. But not right now. Is that going to be a puncture there for Brothers Cool, who's had a spin in the early section of the circuit? And they've got a lot of skiddiness as they go around the circuit, but no puncture at the moment. And I want to go back to the management that I just said from Jericho Willis. If you were managing the pace, you wouldn't be losing this much, I don't think. You would still want a safety margin. And at this point, there are still questions on whether Verf will be able to do this. With 7 seconds already now, Jericho guarantees himself the inability to go over track limits and get himself a 3-second time penalty. Now they don't have that safety margin, and they continue to lose more time again and again and again. These hards are not gelling well with the American driver. The mediums were phenomenal for them. Verf, however, has managed to find an absolute sweet spot with this medium, hard tyre, I should say. Those tyres surely need to be taken away from this man. They can't go any more. They're going to go another lap and try and make it work. 10 seconds slower than their fastest lap time. Absolutely crazy. Of course, we just had that spin, so it's maybe not quite that bad if you look at the deltas. But assuming that Brothers Cool goes into the pit lane by the end of this lap, we're likely not going to see a difference. After all that we saw earlier on, Terence wasn't able to get back within DRS range of Peanuts. Peanuts has found some good pace here and has managed to extend that 3-second time penalty that they have to try and finish ahead overall on Terence. Terence will still look at getting a P3 and continuing their podium streak. Last not being on the podium since round 2 back in Zandvoort, where in the next race, round 3 Singapore, they fought for the race victory for the first time in a long time, and then it only took them one more race to actually get that victory in Monza in the wet conditions. And that is a yellow, and that is going to be, unfortunately, Brothers Cool into the wall on the exit of Spoon. No puncture available to their car, but they do have damage, and that is going to be a soft compound tyre, very much needed to try and get that last point on that car. I've been waiting for it. I've been hoping for it for their sake to go for that soft tyre, and it will be that time to go in. Verf, 7.4 seconds ahead of Jericho Willis, finding so much time over the last few laps. All of a sudden, they've seemed to hit a brick wall, and everything is starting to halt. You can see they've used those tyres up well and good, and on the entry to Spoon Corner, they were pushing it to every little bit they could. And I was going to say they're going to be losing time because of that, but they've just brought it from 0.6 to 0.8 on Jericho Willis. And now they're going to bring it to 2 seconds difference. They all just need to try and find 2 seconds in 2 laps. And I say just. That would be absolutely crazy if they could do that. It's virtually impossible, surely. They need to do everything they can. They need to dig deep to lock in for these final moments, these final minutes in the Grand Prix. They've pushed this long for just under 45 minutes to give it a shot in the Grand Prix, to give them a chance at getting those points. Will they be able to find it? That's another 3 second there for Brothers Call on their out lap, but they don't really need to worry about that. They're looking to go for the fastest lap. Terrence is going to try and go for the fastest lap as well, as they realise that they won't lose to position to Brothers Call. They have the ability to do that safely and go for that extra point. Who will get it? Terrence or Brothers Call? 1 lap fresher tyres are for Terrence. That is the risk that you run if you do go into the pit lane a little bit earlier than you want to, but Brothers Call had so worn tyres and a bit of front wing damage, it was the logical decision to go into the pit lane. And now we go down the back straight, and Jericho Willis has effectively only lost about 2/10 over the last lap, maybe 3. And now things don't look quite so possible for Verf. A phenomenal effort and one more attempt to give it everything. Jericho Willis is quite possibly not worrying at all. They know that they've got 2 seconds to play with, and despite that Sauber being absolutely mighty, they might be all good to go. That being said, Jericho doesn't look comfortable with that battery. They are still trying to eke everything out of that car to make sure that it's safe. It's 3/10. 4/10. Not to 5. And I think it's just a little bit too short in the end for Verf. The Hungarian has driven an absolute masterclass. As you can see, they're pushing with everything they can on entry to the hairpin. 0.4 seconds. Can they make it 0.5? They just can't. I don't know if it was going to be faster sliding the car through the first corner. I don't think it was intentional either. But that's just how hard they're pushing. That's how hard they want it. 8.6 seconds. Absolutely incredible. 1.4 away from victory. 1.3 away from victory. Verf is going to round the final few corners to give it one of the best efforts in Suzuka and will cross the line in first place. But as long as the McLaren driver, this man, Jericho Willis, does not make a mistake in the final chicane, they will take victory and they will drive an absolute masterclass. That's how you manage a time penalty in front of you. Jericho Willis takes victory in Suzuka. Peanuts will finish P3, get a podium since their last race in Silverstone, where they also had that podium and that top spot. It's going to be Terrence pushing for the fastest lap, improving by 4/10 at the moment. They've got 1.2 seconds at the moment, and they've got a little bit more to go. Brothers Call didn't actually make it. They didn't actually beat the fastest lap of Verf. It's going to be Terrence the one to try and make a difference. Terrence rounds the final corner, and they will take that fastest lap, and they will take it by a bit of a margin as well. Lovely stuff indeed. 0.8 of a second to their name to make that one work. Brothers Call gave it everything they could, but in the end, I say that, 1.6 seconds, they might have a chance here. They might have a chance at going for that. Their teammate is going to be hoping that they do get that extra point just for the team's championship to make it a little bit sweeter. But they have taken victory, and that is their main focus. That is fastest lap there for Brothers Call in the end. Brilliant stuff on slightly older tyres as well. They managed to find it and make it work. Very unfortunate for Terrence. They gave it a good effort. They started this race at the back. They finished P3 for the EU drivers and get themselves a Driver of the Day award from the game. Very well deserved indeed. Jericho Willis takes victory once again. Verf in P2 and Peanuts in P3. We've got Terrence and Brothers Call in P5, followed by Rare Winter, who DNF'd earlier on after giving it a good effort to try and fight with their former teammate. That's the race director. These are the time penalties. And that's the pit stop section. We will be back for the post-race interviews. We'll see you in a bit. Hello everyone, welcome to the post-race interviews of the Japanese Grand Prix. That was an intense one in the final moments, a brilliant effort that was not rewarded for Verth, but Jericho Willis, you have to be there to win it, and you did. Absolutely awesome. Can you take us to your race, and what happened on those hard tyres? We saw you on the exit of the pit lane, just not really having the best time, and was the hards just not as good as the mediums?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that, I mean, yesterday I started on the hards and went to the mediums, so I didn't really know what the mediums were like on lighter fuel, how hard you could push them, or the hards, what they were like on lighter fuel and how hard you could push them. So, but yeah, that was like multiple problems, with that pit stop. I actually messed up the pit entry, which I had happen another time here in Japan, where I do the pit limiter speed, and it's the same button that I use for the pit box entry. And for some reason with Japan, it kind of gets confused. And so when I hit it to put on the pit limiter, it said too early. So right there, I lost a second, just like that.
Mm.
And I think then Verth, he probably gained some time on the pit entry based on his penalty. And then, yeah, the not very good outlap. I saw he really was right on it right away. So it was like a combination of a few things. Plus, his pace was better. In qualifying, it was at least 3/10 better. The lap I did in qualifying was a pretty fast lap for me, and he was still 3/10 faster, and that's not really sustainable. That level of lap, it was not really sustainable for me. So I knew he probably had at least a half a second in hand around here, and you kind of saw that play out once I didn't have the DRS with the slipstream, and maybe just the hard tire advantage that he had as well. So, but it was still a good race. And I think, one of the things that really stuck out for me in this race, when I came to the end and it was down to that tiny bit of time there, Brett is cool. His strategy was extremely helpful for me. It was, and he did it perfectly. He stayed out. He gave me the toe down, the back stretch,
Mhm.
and then he gave me DRS down the front stretch. And so, those two things together, he probably gave me a second, which, took a little bit of pressure off me. And then also he pitted late and got the fastest pit stop. So he pulled that point off and put it on our team and on himself and took it off of Earth. So that was, in several different ways, he was extremely helpful. So, some people might look at his strategy and say, what was that? And it's like, it worked out as best as it could for me. It was very helpful. And, he was able to pull home that extra point for the fastest lap for himself as well and the team. So, big thanks to him. He did an incredible job. And even though some people might have been puzzled, it was very helpful. But yeah, Verth, I just want to, congratulate him. I know he's probably disappointed that he didn't get the win, but he was so quick and he did such a good job. And I was under so much pressure. I had 2 warnings, so I had to be super careful on getting a third warning, because if I got a 3-second penalty, that would have been it. He would have got it. And then fuel. This track is so thirsty on fuel with no safety car. I finished the lap with less than 0.1 on the
Wow.
fuel. And so it was, there was a lot of stress trying to manage everything in those last, 7 or 8 laps was really, really difficult. So, just his pace, just congratulations to him. And, one of these days it'd be great if I could actually have the pace to beat him on pace, but I don't know if that's going to happen. It doesn't look like it's going to happen, but we'll take what we can get, because you can't, some people are just quick.
Well, we've got a few races to see if that does happen. But yeah, I will say, at the time, I didn't think what Brothers Cool was doing would have actually made a difference. Defending from Verth, of course, and they're giving you the toe, but maybe it was the difference in the end. So, well done, worked perfectly as a team and executed it perfectly. So, really, congratulations to you. A sprint race in Brazil lots of straights around there. Do you think you can do well?
Brazil's always a tough one for me, and that last, the last corner, I always struggle with those exits. So I think if I can get on top of that, then we might be able to hang around. But also something I really got to work on is my pit stops and my outlaps. So those two things I'll try to address. If I can improve on those, then hopefully I can, be in the fight there. So, but it's a fun track, and there's a couple of different chances at it with the sprint and the main race. So hopefully it'll be a fun weekend.
Awesome. I can't wait. It is another bumpy pit lane entry and a bit of a tricky pit lane exit, but I'm sure you can get it under control. Thank you very much, and you extend your championship lead once again. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
And we move on to Peanuts. Peanuts, that was a lovely P3. Last time you raced in F1.5, you got the P1. You maintained that podium record. Were you hoping for a bit more, or are you happy with that result?
I mean, knowing what track we're around, I'm actually pleased. Like, I am so shocked around here. I don't get how people pull out the pace. I have to say, Verb was flying today. No offense to Jericho Willis, I think Verb did deserve the win. They both did. They were both very quick. Fun to see. I just am sorry I couldn't really compete. I wanted to bring Terrence back into the race, but that didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then Brett is cool. Acted as a amazing team player for me too. Dropping Terrence out of DRS, and then I just somehow pulled a gap, which I don't understand. It just like this track is horrible.
As you drove the circuit, I guess maybe you learnt a few things just unconsciously and was able to improve the pace. That's something that can happen. But yeah, it's a tricky track. It's over now. Moving on to Brazil, is that one that you like? I know that in the past we've seen you actually race very competitively there in the F1 tier a few seasons ago. Do you think you can do well?
I think Brazil has been, if we're talking historically, quite good track for me. Pace-wise, I don't think it's been my best track, but I just think I've been quite lucky. I did a VRL race the other day around there, and the pace was somewhat quite strong. I was just doing my own thing. I dropped DRS because of starting basically last and then overtaking cars. And I just on merit or pace, I was not up there, but I was losing slight time to the guys Charlie, Simon, and the pace was actually quite strong. So I mean, who knows? I would say I'll probably do as bad as I always do, like P5, P6.
No.
But who knows? And I was only here to farm stats before retirement.
I refuse to accept that statement. You've got a Grand Prix distance under your belt. You're ready to go for next week. If you could maybe do a little bit more prep, you can get possibly a very, very good result. From what I've just heard there, I expect you to take a pretty easy victory. Thank you very much, Peanuts, and we'll see you next week.
I mean, I have been gaining a lot in Zingy the last few runs.
Yep, you could definitely do that. That would be awesome. All right, thank you very much, Peanuts, and we'll see you next time.
Cheers.
We move on to Terrence. Terrence, fastest lap attempt at the end there didn't quite work out. It was looking like a nice little train with Peanuts. Obviously, that didn't matter in the end because they are a higher tier driver. But you gave it a good shot. Can you take us through your race?
Yeah, nothing much to say. I would say it's still, yeah, it's so unfortunate that I can't even set a lap time in the short qualifying. But I still kind of manage it with my phone internet to connect with the race. So it's very frustrating.
I have to say, your connection, you didn't really have any lag, so it looked brilliant to me.
Yeah, but I don't know, because when I connect with the Hong Kong server core in Discord, normally I would just got 4 milliseconds, but while connecting with my phone internet, it's just climb up to 48 milliseconds. So I don't think, I don't know, is that good or not? But in the race, back in the game, it feels good. A lot massive lag to others. So I think it's still good things that I can participate in the race.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. The second thing is I just underestimate my power to use the oil, because in the last race it's like I'm not the people who live in Middle East, but in this race I definitely need some oil support, but I don't get much because I think I add a lap extra before the race start, but a lap extra is not enough. I just ease my oil from lap 2, I think, because on lap 1 I already use 0.15 extra. So I mean, if I just push the dead weight until the end, I probably need extra 2.5 laps of oil. So yeah, I have to manage it throughout the whole race. I have to leave up very early, I think maybe 100 meters before the normal breaking point. So yeah, it's very frustrating. So I just tried to keep the DRS with Peanut at that moment, but I don't know why Brescu just letting him go and but not let me go. I mean, it's still in the rule. He don't really block me or do some late defense, so it's okay in the steward field. But yeah, it's disgusting, I would say. Sorry to use those harsh words, but yeah, very disgusting. And the last lap in result is very disgusting for me also, but I have nothing to say because he's faster. So I will appreciate for his fastest lap attempt, and he got it. He got that purple point. So yeah, nothing to say. But I think if I don't have those unfortunate, maybe I can keep up with Jericho and Third. And if I got the oil right, obviously. But yeah, I think it's a good race that Simpson back in Qatar. I'm pretty slow that I can't even keep up the DRS or their play their pace. But in Japan, it seems that I could, but I never do.
Well, you've identified the points of weakness to tackle for next time, and yeah, it's a frustrating one, of course, with Brother School defending from you. Ultimately, maybe he just knew that Peanuts is a higher tier driver and he doesn't need to fight Peanuts, but he does need to fight you. Maybe that was the call. I don't quite know. But yeah, it happened. You gave it a good shot. As I said, you've identified the problems going forward. If you're there in Brazil, there's a few DRS zones that can allow you to kind of pull yourself along a bit easier. Do you think you will be able to fight for the victory there?
In Brazil? I don't know, because in previous track record, I did pretty poor in Brazil. So I don't know. It's just, yeah, I know how the track drive, but my body, maybe my mind, I can't adapt into Lagos. So let's try. I hope my podium streak would still continue. I hope, but when I mess up, maybe I would just do the same things that Brad did in today.
just just go for
Revenge.
a crazy
Revenge.
strategy and slow everyone down. Brilliant. Thank you very much, Terence, and we'll see you next time. Really good effort today. Well done on the podium.
Thank you.
And that's been it. Thank you very much for watching. It's been a pleasure. We will see you next weekend for the Brazilian Grand Prix before the final break of the season. Once again, thank you very much. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.